From the cradle to the grave, from the schoolroom to the boardroom, whether around campfires, in bingo parties, in remote Arctic igloos, or at a happening party in New York City, or even sitting by the dying sun watching the stones of Hampi, stories have always gripped the imagination of us humans. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 1 of Content Ed, the podcast about all things content. I'm your host Padmaja. This season is all about storytelling, where we bring to you some powerful stories and powerful storytellers and tips to apply the power of storytelling in your job, in your projects, and even in life. Every episode will have a story or two and a conversation with a storyteller. Lakshmi, thank you so much for joining us on Content Ed. We're very proud and excited to start Season 2 with you.
Thank you.
This is the season of storytelling.
Yeah.
And we couldn't think of a better person to kick off the season with than the founder of Ink Talks. The most important person in the world is the storyteller, according to Steve Jobs. Our debut guest this season is not just a terrific storyteller herself, but someone who has set for herself a mission to help doers and achievers tell their stories. Meet Lakshmi Pratury, entrepreneur, interviewer, speaker, and self-described people collector. She's the founder of Ink Talks, an annual conference that focuses on spreading disruptive ideas through motivational stories. Through Ink Talks, Lakshmi has showcased India's best stories to a worldwide audience. A well-known writer with articles featured in the San Jose Mercury, San Francisco Chronicle, and our very own Mint, Lakshmi has been in Forbes India's 2010 list of 100 most powerful women. Here's Lakshmi. Can you start by telling us the story of Lakshmi? Technology professional, social entrepreneur, writer, much feted speaker, spouse, mom, and I'm sure many other roles.
Lakshmi as a person, no matter what she does, I think I'm someone who just wants to learn all the time, and I want to have a great time. I want to work with people I like. All in all, I'm just an interesting person one day at a time. I mean, nothing beyond that.
Why do you think, stories grip people so much as opposed to a data sheet or a case study or some other bland piece of marketing collateral?
And I think this is the one thing that in my life at Intel really taught me. And I was probably in every group the only non-engineer in that room. I'm a math major. I'm not an engineer. And engineers get very excited by data. Okay. And when we are talking about product, people would say, oh, but this is great because it has this many arrays, this many gates, this many this, this many. I'm like, well, so what? So for me, till they convinced me that there was a benefit in it for me, and till we figured that story, it just didn't interest me. And I think with Intel Inside happening at the same time, we brought in some of the best ad agencies, storytellers, and it was a new experience for us to be part of consumer studies, to see how consumers are relating to Intel. And I would say that one of the biggest learnings for me was when there was the Pentium failure, when we had to go out into the market and find out why people are reacting the way they're reacting. For the first time, I understood what a consumer brand does. It was just an amazing learning for me of building emotion. And I think I was really part of that journey of telling stories about Intel to film audience, to storytellers, to creators, and we felt that if they understood what we stood for, the stories would include technology in a very positive way. So storytelling to me is everything. What you stand for, what your company stands for, what does your product do? These are not features. Features are the raw material, but you need to spin a story.
Can you tell us a little bit about the yarns that are spilled out of Ink Talks?
Yeah. See, to me, always, to me, human beings, human mind is magical. And I'm always amazed by the story that lies in each human being. And when that is told in the right way, in front of the right audience, the impact it can create. So till I started Ink, everything was in pieces for me. The ability to tell stories was in one place. The ability to see technology that transforms lives through stories is at another place. The ability to make a social impact through stories is in one place. But at Ink, I felt that we can bring it all together to bring commerce, community, and culture together to form the stories that really allow us to write our future together. So to me, this is a collective journey of the human mind to write our stories together. And the story is not enough. You have to use it to move forward. So how do we connect the story to it's the best next step? So we say our theme is we want to accelerate the journeys of game changers. We want to find game changers, give them a platform to tell their stories, work with them on assisting them in telling their stories. They already have the story in them. There's nothing Ink is doing that's giving them a new personality. It's just bringing it out of them. Because most of us try to be something that we think we should be, but we are most beautiful when we are ourselves. In our vulnerability, in our imperfection, in our incompletion is when we are the best. But we try to put all this facade and, put it out there. That is impressive initially, but then it wears off very quickly. But the second thing of when you're your authentic self, some people may write you off initially, but they see you and they stick with you for life. So to me, how do we present people in their best form to themselves? Because each time when we curate a talk, it's as much a journey of the speaker themselves as it is for the audience. So when the speaker can go deep within themselves and be the most authentic, that's when they can make the most impact. And all that emotion, that impact needs a structure to carry it forward to its action. So that's the role Ink plays in the midst of finding a story, telling the story in the best possible way in front of the right audience so they are inspired to help, and then we work with them to complete the circle. So it's a platform where we find the game changers, tell their stories, and just let them get to the next step.
Our story today is an old one, as old as the 5th century in the Common Era, when it was narrated in the Babylonian Talmud. It has since been retold by authors as diverse as English novelist W. Somerset Maugham in 1933, by American writer John O'Hara as an epigraph to his novel of the same name in 1934, and more recently by popular novelist Jeffrey Archer in a collection of short stories with the title To Cut a Long Story Short. We're, of course, talking about the tale of the appointment in Samara. We like Maugham's version best, so here goes. There once was a merchant in Baghdad who sent his servant to the market to buy provisions. In a little while, the servant came back, white and trembling, and said, "Master, just now, when I was in the marketplace, I was jostled by a woman in the crowd. When I turned, I saw it was Death that jostled me. She looked at me and made a threatening gesture. Now, lend me your horse, and I will ride away from this city and avoid my fate. I will go to Samara, and there Death will not find me." The merchant lent him his horse. The servant mounted it and dug his purse in its flanks, and as fast as the horse could gallop, he went. Then the merchant went down to the marketplace, and he saw me standing in the crowd, and he came to me and said, Why did you make a threatening gesture to my servant when you saw him this morning? That was not a threatening gesture, I said. It was only a start of surprise. I was astonished to see him in Baghdad, for I had an appointment with him tonight in Samara. The speaker here is death.
What are the stories that move you?
See, to me, I'm always moved by people I meet on a day-to-day basis. I mean, of course, I'm influenced by writers. I'm influenced by movie makers. I still remember reading my first Steinbeck book and just being like thinking, I was in that place in Grapes of Wrath. I'm in that, truck that's traveling from town to town. I mean, writing is so powerful, and there are women like Gloria Steinem. I mean, there's many of them that really, really influenced me in terms of my thinking, etc. And of course, films, whether it's entertainment or, or deep science, they all influence you. But I'm mostly touched by the people I meet on a day-to-day basis, my family, my friends, my neighbors, and our fellows. I mean, our Ink fellows are the ones who really, really inspire me.
There are thousands of stories from Ink, but are there a couple of stories that are your favorites that you would care to mention to us?
See, we started recently something called Ink Labs. So the idea is that can we take some of the stories of people who've been working with for a long time and who want to create a longer term impact, and can we work with them? I've been very influenced by this foundation called the Long Now Foundation, which is about creating long-term impact. Most of the time when you start something, everybody is asking, what are your quarterly results? What are your yearly results? But if you want to create innovation, you got to think of decades, and you have to think of projects that take a long time. And you have to give them support as though it's happening this year. You can't say, I'll just give you $1 today. When you prove, I'll give you $2. You still have to give what they need, but have the stomach to go for it for a long time. So in that, the kind of people we are working with is what really excites me. It's not just that a lot of them are Ink fellows. You take someone like a Shannon Olson, who's from America, came to India and says, this is the biggest biodiversity. As a scientist, this is where I want to live. Up and moves her family here, and studying, insects and how they behave, and what can that teach us about how we think or how we make decisions, or studying sponges to figure out, can we create a machine that can inhale microplastics and reduce the environmental hazards. These are like huge missions,
Right.
They are multi-year kind of projects. So for us, those are the kind of stuff that excites us to say, can we take these ideas and make them something big? And it's not just Ink fellows that are come through the route. There are people who've been incredibly successful. Someone like an Atul Jalan, who runs a big company, raised a ton of money, but is a new idea of how we can use technology to change the way data is used. And we are working with him on that. So it's very interesting to take ideas that are very, very long-term focused and say, can we bring a community together to work with us on solving those problems, funding those problems. So these are the stories that, that I think of every day to say, it's not only the person who started it, it becomes much larger than the person. The idea is so interesting and so far-fetched, and it can include so many different people that you say, can I have a longer journey with this that can create a deeper impact? So that's what excites me.
In these days of 10-second explainer videos, 2-minute podcasts,
Sure.
Tweetlet, is it still possible to convey stories in these shortened forms? And where is this all going?
See, I think every time a new technology comes, people write off the old technology. but it still exists.
Right.
You know, we still have radio, we still have television, we still have streaming, we still have, internet. We have everything exists and everything has its place. Instead of being forced to have only one option, you will have multiple options. And I think depending on what you want, you will have that. There are times you just want for 2 hours, listen to some beautiful music and, kind of space out. And there are times you're like, I just need to know about this. Just give me a quick 10-minute, version of what this is about. So we are different people at different times. And I think we'll consume content in different ways. So I feel if you stay authentic to the way that suits you, that'll always be in demand. We always swing the pendulum and then we come back somewhere in the middle. But every time we are swinging really far, when we come back, we have moved a little further. And that's how we keep progressing. And sometimes we may come back to where we started, and sometimes we may move forward. But I think it's a very different generation. We have to think visually now and not verbally. It doesn't mean verbal is not important. It's very important.
We are an almost all-women company.
Yes, yeah.
So we started off as all women, and when my team was researching, talking to you, we were blown away that you blew past all these barricades. You were a non-engineer who got into an engineering company. Then at the height of the US migration, you came back to India, and then you started something on your own, and you've been doing great in this. So what has been propelling you forward to break all these barriers?
Sure. I know I always believed that it's very important to have a very strong network of women friends. I really, and people question, like when we say Ink Women or something, in this age, do we need to have women's gatherings or, whatever? I always say yes, because I have gatherings with my hiking friends. I have gatherings with my poetry friends or movie going friends. So like that, why not with women? So there is something I get there I don't get anywhere else, and there's a certain camaraderie, etc. And the few things that really help me move forward is, in a very funny way, to forget who you are. In any gathering, if you say that, oh God, I'm the only woman here, I'm the only short one here, I'm only brown one here or something, when you become conscious of yourself, that's when you can't perform. And this is where my theater training really helped me, because in theater they teach you it's not about how good you look on the stage, it's about how great you make the other person look on the stage. The more your focus is on getting what you want from the other person, you look good. So the more the focus is on you, when you're always thinking of, do I look right? Am I standing right? Or am I, kind of looking like this? You become very boring to watch. When you forget who you are and you're immersed in your purpose, you become the most interesting person. So I always encourage women, ask yourself, what do you want? It doesn't mean if you stay home, that's wrong, or everybody should work, or I have no such definitions. But in your own journey, it's important to have your own identity.
Thanks so much, Lakshmi. It was wonderful talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
This brings us to the end of Season 2, Episode 1 of Content Ed. We do hope you enjoyed it. Tune into our next episode with some theatre wallas for an entirely different take on storytelling. Till then, so long.